Good morning, everyone. How are you? Good. As director of the Stress and Healthy Aging Research Lab, as the title suggests, I focus on factors that may predict or correlate with cognitive function in late life. And I'm also interested in understanding predictors and correlates of emotional well-being in late life. So I guess the question that we're being asked today is dementia the next epidemic? And I guess the answer you get will depend on who you're asking. I tend to take a bit more of a positive view, and I think that this question sort of comes from the fact that population is aging. And with a rise in the aging population, I think that there are a lot of scary messages that are out there, such as this one, the silver tsunami, the coming crisis that affects us all. I mean, this is pretty scary, and I think it's, the person who wrote this was so scared that they forgot to spell check their title. But I'd just like to say that aging is not the same thing as developing dementia. That there are many individuals who will maintain cognitive function in late life. And research has actually shown this. Some of my research has shown that, if you sample over 3,000 individuals, which we've done, that you'll have about 30% of that sample that will maintain cognitive function in late life. And we're talking about, 70s, 80s, looking at our 70s and 80s. And about perhaps 16% of that population will actually show pathological cognitive decline, which is what dementia is. So with respect to diet, again, you could look at either various nutrients that we're taking in. I've focused on sodium, and we could also look at diet pattern. So a lot of my research here comes from a longitudinal study called the Quebec Longitudinal Study on Nutrition and Aging, also known as NUAGE for short. And in this study, it's over 1,000 older adults, men and women, who were followed over a 4-year period. They completed a very large comprehensive questionnaire that is called the Food Frequency Questionnaire. And from this Food Frequency Questionnaire, we were able to take out the amount of sodium, to determine the amount of sodium that these individuals ate in the last 12 months, and able to correlate it with cognitive function at baseline, as well as to see, does sodium intake predict cognitive function or cognitive trajectory over a 4-year period. What was found in this particular study was that sodium intake did not associate with baseline cognitive function, but it did predict cognitive trajectory over 4 years, in that those who consumed high to mid levels of sodium actually showed accelerated cognitive decline over 4 years. However, what's important is that it wasn't found across the board, is that this relationship was only found in older adults who did not engage in physical activity. So this study was very important because first, it was the first study to show that sodium intake, salt intake, impacts our brain health. Before this study, really the focus was on cardiovascular health. And what we know now through research is that whatever affects the heart also affects the brain. Again, sodium intake affects cognitive function. However, we can't just look at diet alone or nutrient intake alone. We have to look at other lifestyle behaviors and how these behaviors interact, so taking a more comprehensive view.
I am aware that the cost of caring for all human beings is complicated and it's deep. And as a nurse, fundamentally, profoundly is the person-nurse relationship. And I'm just going to tell you that in dementia care in particular, it is that relationship that is totally primary, because we need to be able to know the background story of the individual and figure out how to bring themselves back to the meaning of who they are, and at the same time care for their body, ensure that their nutrition is dealt with properly, to supply their emotional supports, and make life enjoyable for them in the last part of their lives. People need knowledge, and that will draw them and attract them to gerontological nursing, Because unfortunately, most people think nursing is to be the nurse on Grey's Anatomy, on blah, 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 on this show, on this movie. And for those of you who are nurses in the room, you know that that is a media public viewpoint, that is not what nursing is about. It is about relationships. It is about connection. And these are all of the kinds of behaviors, and I'll just tell you that this also includes sleep. And we know at the Canadian Gerontological Nursing Association, Choosing Wisely Canada, there are many interventions that we are discovering. If we just now, with very good mattress surfaces and really excellent incontinent products, we no longer have to go into somebody's room while they are sleeping deeply, transfer them, change their incontinent brief, settle them all back down, and hope they go back to sleep. Because what they have been discovering is the better and longer the person with cognitive impairment sleeps in the night, the less irritable they will be, the more they will eat, the more they will smile, and the more that they're actually going to have less pinching, slapping out, more patience for the things that are happening around them, and more noise tolerance. And so the research has shown us that the amount of inappropriate medications that are given and the physical restraints that are used goes way down if we just let people sleep through the night. To care for an older person with cognitive impairment is like geriatric intensive care. And it is not babysitting. It is based in science. It is based in passion. It is based in knowledge. It is based in caring. And it is highly, highly complex. Therefore, you need skilled staff, and they must be educated. Responsive behavior is the term that we try to teach our students. We don't encourage them to use terms like aggression, because that is a value judgment, and this is an entirely different context. It needs to be understood as an unmet need. And thus the staff, the students, are taught to be good detectives. What is happening here? It could be a crowded environment. So if I were a clinical nurse specialist coming in and this was the dining room of a long-term care home, I would go, too many people in here. Too close together. The light is problematic. The temperature could be uncomfortable. These are all things that we really need to investigate. And we know very clearly that loss, grief, and isolation is very problematic. And we often impose that on individuals because as nurses, we're so busy with some of the instrumental stuff that we forget. And we're burdened with time that we can't do these interactions. And so the programs that we have developed are interprofessional so that we all learn together. Personal support workers, registered practical nurses, nutritional aides, all receive the same training so that they can interact with purpose and compassion.
So I'm going to be discussing user experiences of a 360 video that was developed, and really to get an understanding of what user empathy is and their knowledge about dementia. It's like the virtual reality videos, so the people who have the goggles on, if you're not familiar with it. So we actually developed a scenario, which is actually kind of novel. Most of the 360 videos that are out there for virtual reality is actually an individual who's out in the community who has dementia. And we thought, it's really important to looking at the aspect of a person with dementia who's entering a hospitalized sort of situation, like an institution. This hasn't been really reviewed before. So we really wanted to delve into what does that feel like? So we actually hired actors from the Interpersonal Skills Teaching Center that's associated with Ryerson University. We completed that 360 filming at Toronto Rehab. And we also included student artwork. Some individuals felt that they were a little dizzy with the 360 video. Some of that was actually done on purpose because it goes blurry, so not always focus, which was part of the aspects. There's blinking, so you can see that eyes are opening and closing, so that you actually feel like you're within the person who is experiencing the event of going into a hospital setting and being left there alone to be under assessment overnight. So we really wanted to make it feel real. Unfortunately, that sometimes brings discomfort, but again, that makes you feel more so for the person who has dementia too, what they're feeling.
Thank you.